Morning, and welcome to the Emerging Professions Forum, High Demand, High Wage. My name is Martha McCabe, and I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas City STEM Alliance. The KC STEM Alliance is a collaborative network of educators, business partners, and organizations that inspires interest in science, technology, engineering, and math careers to generate a robust force of related professionals for our community. KC STEM Alliance is delighted to join fellow workforce and education partners, Blue Valley Schools, DeSoto Unified School District, Johnson County Community College, and Kansas Workforce Partnership in the planning for today. Safety is JCCC's highest priority. Please note that the exits from the Polsky Theater are clearly marked above the doorways. In the event of an emergency, please dial 4111 to notify campus police, and restrooms are located out the doors and to your left down the hall. Today's forum showcases the importance of a shared vision for regional opportunities and future success for our high school graduates, how our local demand for educated workers is exceeding the supply, and to highlight current high demand and high wage career opportunities available here in Kansas City. It is my pleasure to serve this morning as your MC, and at this time I would like to introduce Dr. Joseph Sopcich, President of the Johnson County Community College, to welcome all of you and share his comments about the value of today's forum. Dr. Joe Sopcich is the 5th President of Johnson County Community College. He has been with JCCC since 1992, serving over the years as Executive Director of Institutional Advancement and Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. He taught as an adjunct in the college's business division from 2006 to 2014. Dr. Sopcich earned bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Notre Dame and a PhD from the University of Kansas. Let's give Dr. Sopcich a round of applause.
Thank you, Martha, and welcome to Johnson County Community College, and also to the Polsky Theater. I have to ask, how many of you, is this the first time that you've ever been in the Polsky? Wow, that's terrific. Well, this is a wonderful theater. It has about 400 seats, and I'd like to point out that you see all these little white boxes across all over the ceiling. That's a part of a special, I guess you could say, hi-fi stereo system that we were able to put in thanks to the generosity of a donor. And that gives us a real super high fidelity, high quality sound when we're up on stage here. So I think it's really cool to talk about that, and it's just representative of how this community all works together. I'm supposed to say a few remarks about workforce development and STEM. Last week I had the good fortune of being in Washington, D.C. for the, and it was a good fortune to be in Washington, D.C. Oh good, I can tell Washington jokes the whole time. It's a very receptive audience. But it was the National Legislative Summit for Community Colleges. And community college trustees and presidents kind of descended on Washington, or perhaps ascended to Washington, to talk about some of the issues of the day. And the one common theme that was persistent whenever there was a speaker on stage or a presentation made was the importance of the role of the community college in workforce development and what's happening in our country with regards to the economy. And it was kind of a fascinating theme because there was a real upbeat optimism about what can be done when everyone pulls together. And today that challenge is not just with community colleges, but it certainly extends to universities and, very importantly, to K-12 systems as well, as everyone must work together to try to do what's in the best interest of our economy, our country, but most importantly, of the students that we serve. So today I would like to thank the KC STEM Alliance, KC Rising, the Workforce Development Partnership, everyone here for spending some time to discuss these really critical issues that affect all of us. Now, it's going to be my pleasure to introduce Dr. Doug Girod. And this is a rather lengthy introduction. Despite his desire for me to shorten it, I just can't because it's fascinating. Dr. Girod is the Executive Vice Chancellor of the University of Kansas Medical Center. He oversees the educational, research, patient care, and community engagement missions of the University of Kansas Schools of Medicine, Nursing, and Health Professions, and their total annual enrollment of more than 3,300 students and a workforce of more than 2,100 faculty and more than 4,000 staff. Research funding of nearly $100 million in campuses in Kansas City, Wichita, Salina, in activities in every country in the state of Kansas, as well as in western Missouri, elsewhere in the country, and internationally. Gerard earned his bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of California at Davis and his medical degree from the University of California at San Francisco. He completed his residency and an NIH research fellowship at the University of Washington in Seattle. A surgeon, Gerard joined the University of Kansas Medical Center faculty in 1994 and quickly rose to the academic ranks, becoming chair of the otolaryngology. You could have been cardiology or something, but department in 2002. Now, what that means is otolaryngology is really the diseases of the ears, nose, and throat, and also the base of the skull. And Doug deals primarily with cancer in those areas. He served in the United States Navy Reserve from 1982, rising to the rank of lieutenant commander and later earning the Meritorious Service Medal. He was honorably discharged in 1997. I tell you, it's great to have Doug here, and now whenever we introduce somebody, I feel like I have to say, and he's great, he's going to be so great, and we know Doug's going to be great. Wow, and Trump jokes are fair game. That's fantastic. Please help me welcome to the stage Dr. Doug Gerard.
Thank you, Joe, for that very, very nice introduction. And I'll try to keep the Trump jokes to a minimum. They asked me to come today to talk about an initiative that I've been involved with for almost 3 years now, a civic engagement really around growing the prosperity of the region. We call it KC Rising, and it's an initiative that started really out of a strategic retreat in Dallas, Texas, from the Civic Council, and they heard a report from the Brookings Institute along with the Mid-America Regional Council that ended up in a report called Prosperity at a Crossroads, if you want to look it up. But it really looked at the Kansas City metropolitan-wide bi-state economy and how it was performing relative to before the recession of 2008, 2009. And really, that report, as my co-chair in this effort, Scott Smith, likes to say, it was really, things were going okay, but the check engine light was blinking, if you will, because there were some features of the economy that were not going well. We were not recovering out of that recession as fast as a lot of our peer cities. And it really was through that conversation that discussion started in the business community that this seemed like a really good time to think about a specific civic engagement to try and put some initiatives together to redirect, to ramp up that economy, and to continue to grow the economy of the metro area and the jobs that go with that. So a number of civic organizations came together, and I would say that I think this is probably the first time this group of organizations came together to this high degree of collaboration to work together around this. So the Civic Council of Greater Kansas City, the Mid-America Regional Council, the Chamber, Greater Chamber, and the Kansas City Area Development Council. And so all these agencies came together to help staff, support, and organize this effort, but it's really been through volunteership of business leaders, civic leaders, and academic leaders that have really done the work behind this effort. Really to trying to pull together a shared vision for regional prosperity, again, for the entire bi-state Kansas City metropolitan area. And we've had well over, actually almost 300 volunteers now involved in this process as we've gone through the initiative to look at where some opportunities might be. When we started this out, Scott Smith and I, we talked to a lot of the Chambers of Commerce, the Economic Development Councils, academic and business leaders, and really recruited a very robust steering committee that helped us kick this thing off. And as we started out at the very beginning, we knew that we wanted to put something together that was meaningful. A lot of us have been involved in strategic planning processes that then sit on the shelf for the next 5 or 10 years. So we weren't really very interested in doing that. So we knew it needed to be transparent, collaborative, we knew it needed to be data-driven, and we needed to have metrics that we could see that we were going to be accountable for that. So we spent a lot of time doing research with the Mid-America Regional Council team as well as the Civic Council Analytics team to think about what would those metrics be. If we as a community pulled together and say, we're going to grow this economy, how would we measure that? And this is what we ultimately settled on, were what we call the big dots, 3 big dots. And the first one is quality jobs. If we're growing our economy, we're growing the number of quality jobs. Not just jobs, quality jobs. So we have about 1 million jobs in the greater Kansas City metro area, and we would, by this classification, about 400 to 500,000 of those would be considered a quality job. And within this metric, a quality job is one that requires either a certificate or degree, post-secondary certificate or degree, or has a wage that's above the average for that job classification, so a good-paying job. The other one, obviously, if you're growing your economy, sort of the no-brainer one is your gross domestic product for the region or regional domestic product. You can't grow your economy if you're not growing your GDP. And so, obviously, that's a measure, but that's a very global, high-level measure. And we really wanted to be sure that this initiative didn't just impact 10% of our community. We really wanted for this to be a broad-based effort to really elevate all boats in the community. And that's really where we ultimately settled on the median household income. Because if you're going to move that number, you really have to raise the prosperity for your entire community. You can't do it for just a slice of the community. So we really figured if we could move these 3 dots, then we were actually probably being successful as a community to grow our economy. But we didn't want to just measure against ourselves either, because we live in a very, very active economic environment across this country. We have regions changing all the time, and so we needed a peer group to measure ourselves against. And we looked at a lot of different ways to do that, but ultimately settled on just size. What are the 15 communities that are larger than us, and what are the 15 communities smaller than us? And that's our weight class, if you will. So these are the communities, the metropolitan areas that line up on that. On the left side, you see the ones that are larger than us. They get up to about 3 million people in a metropolitan area. And on the right side, you see the ones that are smaller than us, and it gets down to just over 1 million people in that range. So these are really the metropolitan areas that we, in a sense, are competing with in the economy. And our goal is to be in the top 10 in those 3 big dots, comparing ourselves to these 30 other communities. To align our work, we worked with the Brookings Institute to develop a framework to do this, and we really focused it in 3 main areas: trade, ideas, and people. And trade is really how you grow that GDP. You cannot grow your economy if all you're doing is selling goods and services to each other in your community. You don't grow that way. You have to export. You have to export goods and services, create those jobs here for the exports, and bring the money back into our community to grow the economy. So trade, a very big one of those. We also need to find the next big startup companies. So Kansas City's got an incredible entrepreneurial history. You think about Sprint, Cerner, Garmin, H&R Block, Marion Labs. Obviously, a lot of very successful startup companies have come up out of Kansas City over the last generations, but we really need the next wave of those. So how do we make sure we have an environment that's conducive to that and that we don't lose those startup companies to the coast, which happens with some regularity? And then lastly, most importantly, and really the reason we're all here today is really the human capital piece of this, because none of this works if you don't have the workforce behind it. If you're really going to grow your companies, if you're really going to grow your industries, you have to have the right workforce to do that. And you have to be able to grow them, and you have to be able to recruit them, and you have to be able to retain them. So those were the 3 areas that we really focused. Obviously, these are not silos. There are a lot of things that interact across these, and we knew that was going to be the case, and we certainly looked for those opportunities. And we also knew that there were going to need to be some metrics in each one of these areas that ultimately would feed up to move the big dots, but we needed to be able to measure activity at a much lower level as well. So as we started to work and pull these together, we had work groups around each of these with co-chairs for each of these work groups. And as I said, well in excess of 200 volunteers staffing these or working on these different initiatives as we went through it. And I'll go briefly through each of them. But I want to spend a little bit of time on workforce in particular, since that's really why we're here today. So we really focused in workforce, and Sandy Price, from former HR VP for Sprint, and Michael Rohn for J.E. Dunn led this group, but there were over 60 volunteers actually in this group alone. There's 6 different task forces because there's so much going on in this space. A lot of it really good, and we knew when we kicked this off, we didn't want to replicate anything that was already happening. We didn't want to duplicate. We didn't want to create a lot of unnecessary bureaucracy. But we also wanted to see what was working well and what could we leverage that was working well, and then where are there gaps that we could step into as some new initiatives to try to address those gaps. So we focused for workforce, really focused around the alignment, access, and attraction. So alignment, we heard a little bit, even Joe mentioned it, a little bit of the challenge of making sure you have the workforce with the right sets of skills for what your jobs are. And really that Brookings report showed us that that was not the case. In the Kansas City metro area, we do pretty well in attainment, of educational attainment. We have a huge mismatch in the degrees that we're producing and the jobs that we have open. And STEM being the biggest one of those mismatches, as you'll hear, I'm sure, more about today. So this concept of a talent to industry exchange is really a very concerted effort. Mid-America Regional Council is taking the charge on this one with Sherry Gonzalez to really do surveys in particular job areas and then work with business leaders in those job areas to understand what are the actual competencies that are needed for those, and then to get alignment between those competencies and our institutions of higher education to make sure that we are lining those up and that we have a pathway to connect those. And so we start, our first one is in the life sciences. Actually, it's pretty far along. We'll kick off later this spring. Second one in the design and construction area, with a third one actually in construction will go on this coming year. So really a robust model that's now been developed to do this, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to click through a number of these very high demand environments to get that alignment piece going. Access, and that's certainly a challenge for all of us, and our community colleges play a huge role in this access arena, but we know that a significant part of our population is challenged to gain access. And so working with the Kauffman Foundation, you're probably now familiar with the Casey Scholars Program that grew out of the Kauffman Scholars Program, but this is really the Kauffman Scholars Program on steroids. They have put up almost $80 million to start this off with an expectation to match that from the community to really provide access for low and lower middle income families to allow these kids to get into higher education institutions. And that process kicked off in the new Casey Scholars Program, kicked off in September. Our team, Michael Rohn, actually left our workforce group to help run the Casey Scholars Program because he felt so strongly about it. That kicked off in September. They're taking the applications right now, and they expect to have in excess of 250 scholars funded by next month. So this is already up and going. It's well, but it's going to need the rest of that community engagement to keep it going and growing the way that it should. KC Degrees is really a different approach. So also the studies showed us that there are over 300,000 adults in the Kansas City metro area who have some higher education but no certificate or degree. So that's 300,000 folks that have started that path but had not achieved anything with that would allow them to move into a different place in the workplace. And so this is a program to help fund those folks to re-engage. And it's not just funding, it's connecting. It's getting with them and looking at what it's concierges, if you will, to help them look at what they've already done and connect them with our institutions to see how they can take what they've already done and then leverage that with some additional funding to go forward and complete a certificate or a degree that will allow them to help move into some of these high need areas. So just a couple of the things that are going on around the access. And then lastly, attraction. This is the recruitment piece, and you know, we hear a lot that we're the flyover zone, so it's hard to get people to come to Kansas City. My experience actually at the Med Center is if I can get them here, I can usually get them here. Once they get here and experience what a great place it is and what an incredible community we have, it almost sells itself, particularly when you look at cost of living relative to San Francisco or Boston. But you got to get them here, and that is a challenge. The KCADC, this is what they do. They recruit companies for a living, is what KCADC does. They recruit them to move to Kansas City to set up their operations. They are really good at this. And so they have a talent toolkit within KCADC for the companies that belong, but those are the larger companies, but some great recruitment tools. So we've developed a pared down version of that that's now available free to any company in Kansas City, no matter how big or how small, to help provide resources to help recruit when you're having to go outside of our marketplace to recruit folks to move to Kansas City. And if you haven't been to this, you should. You should go check out this Talent Cool Toolkit. You can go to kcrising.com, and the link's there. You live in a really cool city, and if you didn't believe it, go look at this, and it'll tell you how cool we really are. So around innovation and entrepreneurship, we did a lot of research here as well. Ron LeMay, who used to be with Sprint and now runs Open Air Equities, along with Darcy Howe, who's with Merrill Lynch and an angel investor, and Davion Ross, who's a serial entrepreneur, chaired up this group. And they're entrepreneurs, so they operated a little bit differently than everybody else, but they got an incredible amount of work done. And really, through their surveys, realized that with the entrepreneur community, capital is a very big problem. And what goes with that is culture. So investing in startup companies is a relatively high-risk operation, and typically investors in Kansas City are relatively risk averse. And so we don't have a culture where people are investing significantly in these startup companies, and they often have to go to the coast to get venture capital, and often the venture capital then makes a move to the coast, and then we've lost the company. So they tried to tackle both of these issues. The Casey Rise Fund, Darcy Howe heads this. She's now raised $15 million, almost exclusively from first-time investors into this kind of an activity. This fund, and it is a venture capital fund, it's a for-profit fund, is designed to invest only in Kansas City companies to help them stay here, and it's what's known as a sidecar fund. So we don't really have, this fund doesn't have the expertise to evaluate each and every new business to figure out if that's a good investment or not. So what they do is they wait until another venture capital company does. And once they make a decision that this is a worthwhile investment, they can leverage the Casey Rise Fund on a matching basis to get additional funding. And so the other company also knows that the Casey Rise Fund's out there, and they know that they're going to be able to draw on this additional money, so it's more enticing to them to invest. So it helps pull in money in addition to the Casey Rise Fund. And we've now invested in 5 companies since last February, so this has moved along quite quickly. Along that effort is KC InvestEd, which is buried within KC SourceLink. KC SourceLink really leverages resources to try and help the entrepreneurs. Well, InvestEd is really designed to help the investor. How do you help investors who aren't used to investing in startup companies get more knowledgeable about how to do that? And then a lot of work is going on around the collaboration hubs. Kevin McGinnis is working with what was the Sprint TechStars program, trying to design the future of that. The Kauffman Foundation's doing a big evaluation right now of all different types of accelerators and incubators that we have in the area, trying to figure out what best practices are so we can be as robust in this area as well. And last, I'm going to talk a little bit about trade. Certainly not last, because this is a huge area for us. And we really, with trade, we took a look at all the different industry sectors in Kansas City and decided that we were going to focus on some areas that were going to give us probably our quickest yield, if you will, for that. And one of those areas was really architecture and engineering. We have a lot of depth in Kansas City. I mean, there are some pretty amazing statistics. Every Olympic stadium since 1994 was designed in Kansas City. Pretty cool. Yeah? Yeah. Every 25% of the world's drinking water was designed and built by a plant or by a company in Kansas City. I mean, some pretty significant statistics there. 3 of the top 20 engineering firms are located here. So really, we have a great cluster around this, and yet most of the world doesn't know that. In fact, probably most people in this room didn't know that. So we got a problem there, right? It's when you start talking about recruiting and retaining, and not just recruiting talent, but recruiting business, the world needs to know this. So working with the architectural firms and the engineering firms, they've all gotten together and they actually are talking to each other, which is a big step. I'm not sure that had happened very much before, but actually realize they have a lot in common. Even though they compete every single day for business, they have a lot in common. And there are a lot of things that we can do together that really will help all of them continue to grow to get the talent that they need and the business that they need. So that's been labeled KC Global Design. We've taken it to Washington, D.C., and we've vetted it with a number of agencies, international programs, and we're really excited about this, and it's really getting up and going. And then around competitiveness, exports are a very big thing, and the World Trade Center, which runs out of the Greater Kansas City Chamber, did an initiative 2 years ago with the Brookings Institute to develop an export plan for Kansas City. And this is an international export plan, not just not domestics, but international. And have really gone through a process of developing that plan. Global Cities Initiative is really what that's called, or Go Global KC. And that's really a concierge business that they've put together to allow companies, and again, really typically small and medium-sized companies that either don't export or they do a little bit of exporting and would like to grow that. How do you connect them with resources that exist? And a lot of resources do exist, you just don't know where to find them. So this is really a connector mechanism, and they hope to do 50 companies in their first 2 years, and they've done 40 in their first 8 months. So clearly demand is there to do that, and hopefully that will help more of our companies work into that export area. A couple other areas just to touch on. Kinetic is a regional effort to get conversation going around smart transportation. Kansas City has always benefited from being at the great crossroads of both highways, trains, and rivers. And we have really benefited from that with our logistics, and we're certainly seeing that at the intermodal and other places that there's recognized now. We'll have 4 Amazon plants in the Kansas City metro area by next year. So, I mean, we really have an opportunity there, but technology is changing very quickly, and how do we make sure we're part of that technology? How do we help lead that technology going forward? And I would just touch briefly on cybersecurity, because there wasn't an industry that we didn't talk to that said this was a huge issue for them. And yet there really is very little talent in the cybersecurity space, and not even very many programs in the cybersecurity space. So I think this is, while we don't have a lot of depth in this, we have some real opportunity and we have some assets. The FBI actually has a huge cybersecurity force here in Kansas City. One of their national centers is based here, as does the Federal Reserve Bank. So we do have some assets here that most of us probably didn't realize was there, and trying to figure out how we leverage that, and with our educational programs to develop talent in the cybersecurity space is a great opportunity going forward. Maybe the panel can talk about that a little bit. So really, these 3 columns, you can see we've had a lot of progress in the last year. We started out with a promise when we kicked it off. Last year we did a year 1 update, and actually I think some of the pamphlets are out there from our year 1 update, which are 11 and a half months old now. But that was really the plan, and now we're really kind of reporting on the progress, how a number of these initiatives have moved along. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about it, you can go online, kcrising.com. We do a newsletter that you can sign up for, a number of events. And that's the website that you can go find a lot of these resources at. Just a quick plug for next week is our year 2 update. So a little bit more depth and information on what we just talked about today. We'll be talking about on the 28th as we do our year 2 update here in Johnson County, right on State Line and Shawnee Mission. So hopefully some of you might be able to join us there for that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the panel.
Thanks, Dr. Gerard. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Gerard. Really exciting to hear the work that's being done in the city, and know that many of you are responsible for some of this work, as well as thinking about how your work is going to connect to the initiatives with KC Rising. It's my pleasure to introduce Keely Schneider. She serves as the Executive Director for Workforce Partnership. Prior to joining the Kansas Workforce Partnership in October of 2016, Keely was the Associate Director of the Civic Council for Greater Kansas City, one of the co-sponsors of the KC Rising initiative. There, she was staff lead for all education and workforce initiatives, including the Human Capital Work Group for KC Rising. In her new role, she now leads our local Kansas Workforce Investment Board, serving both employers and job seekers in the counties of Johnson, Wyandotte, and Leavenworth. And Keely's going to share with us the handouts that you have and some additional information relative to the work of KC Rising. So welcome to today's forum, Keely.
Well, good morning. I'm so excited to be here, not only because I fairly recently came out of this KC Rising amazing initiative and was so privileged to be a part of a lot of the work that we did in human capital. But now I'm a new executive director for Workforce Partnership, and so I'm kind of straddling 2 jobs here today, and thought that we would, before you leave, at least give you a little background and context as to what exactly these handouts are and how they came about, because I think it'll serve as you look through them to know why they were created and what the purpose was originally. So the first one I want to share with you is the Education Asset Inventory. That's the big thick one that you see like this. And this work really came out of what is now called GradForce KC, but at the time was called some very long name having to do with the Lumina Partnership for Post-Secondary Attainment. So of course we rebranded it something much cooler and much shorter. But the Lumina Foundation grant was very key to a lot of the work we were doing in KC Rising, because it was happening here in the Kansas City area. We were given that grant from Lumina through the Mid-America Regional Council. That was happening at the same time that the Human Capital Work Group was getting started with KC Rising. So of course, not wanting to duplicate efforts and wanting to really streamline our work, we made sure that those two groups came together and worked in concert so that we weren't, again, duplicating efforts. One of the first things that we did was we said, we're not really sure what programs we have going on in our region across all of our post-secondary institutions. And in particular, we're not really sure what we have going on in the 5 sectors that KC Rising was focusing on. So one of the first things we did through technical support with the Lumina Foundation is go to them and say, we need help. We need someone to help us create an asset inventory so we know what we have programmatically here in Kansas City, how many programs we have at the different levels, and how many seats we have available. Because if the situation is that we need cybersecurity and we need 1,000 of them, but we have one program and it seats 30 people, well, we've got a misalignment there and we've got work to do. But we needed to know where we started. So that was the purpose of the Education Asset Inventory. We did the first one in 2015. And like I said, that was done through the Lumina Foundation from a group called the Center for Adult and Experiential Learning, called CALE, if you've ever heard of them. They came in, they did the inventory for us, and they also brought with them some key takeaways from that inventory. And just as one example, and I'll tell you this example because I think it's showing you how powerful this inventory can be now that we've done the second inventory, which was just published last December, just this past December. So the first inventory, in IT, we broke that down, and Kale said to us, you guys, you really don't have very many programs in cybersecurity. You have like 2 or 3. And we knew from a lot of the focus groups we were doing in KC Rising that that was a problem, because we had heard, as Dr. Gerard mentioned, every single industry, no matter what it was that we were talking to, said we need cybersecurity. So we put it out there in the inventory. We said, here's where we are with cybersecurity programs, here's how few we have, this is a need. And I am so proud to say that 1 year later, if you look now at this inventory, we have 14 programs where we had, I think, 2 or 3 only a year ago. So for people out there who are naysayers and say that higher ed can't move quickly, that higher ed can't pull together programs that are needed in this community, I say baloney, because they've done it, and we've done it here in Kansas City, and I'm really proud of that. So that is just one example of the power of this inventory. Please feel free to look through it, see where we've made observations about gaps or about possible other areas that we could focus on together, because I think this is the kind of information we all need so that we know what all of our different regional education institutions are doing. So that's the Education Asset Inventory. And then the second piece I wanted to give you a little background on is the Common Sector's Competencies Report. This also just came out in December. This report was really the brainchild of Tim Carlson. And if you guys know Tim, he is the HR director for Bayer Animal Health, and he sat on our human capital work group. And we were at a meeting one day, and he just kind of posed this question. Gosh, what would it look like if we took the 5 focus areas, 4 of which are represented today on the panel, but what if we took the competencies that are the base level competencies for each of those industry sectors and came together, and what if we found some commonality? What if we said, gosh, that's a very similar competency set that we need over here in engineering, that we need over there in IT, that we need in financial services and insurance? And what if we brought those together and then said, hey, educators, here's what the vast majority of your growing industries in Kansas City need in terms of competencies. And Tim goes, what would that look like? And of course, everyone looked at him and we said, Tim, would you like to chair a task force on common sector competencies? And of course, he said yes. So that is where this came from. A lot of work went into this. We vetted these competencies with every one of the industries, with actual employers actually here in Kansas City. So when you read through this, I think you'll see what we've done is we've taken competencies and we've explained them in a way that is sort of like a rubric here. So you have what are the fundamental or entry-level competencies across all of these major sectors that employers are finding important. Then what would it take in competency language to be an advanced leader in that particular area, and so forth. So as you read through this as educators, know that this comes from the business community, and know that it's written in business speak, not edu-speak. So one of the things I think would be very powerful, perhaps a follow-up to this, is to sit down with K through 12 educators, counselors, principals, and say, what does it look like to have good customer service when you're in middle school? What does it look like to be able to navigate ambiguity when you're a ninth grader? And that's the kind of language that our businesses use. But we need to understand that at an education level so that we're producing students who come out of our K-12 space with those competencies that are most needed. So that is what this piece is. And I'm proud to say, I don't know where Susan Wally went. There you are. On her staff, Doug Elmer is one of her vice presidents, and he wrote the educator's introduction to this piece. So it's really nice, so I do encourage you to take a look at that. And then the last piece you have here is a talent to industry exchange two-piece. This just goes into more depth on what Dr. Drodd was speaking about on the talent to industry exchange. That is really a public-private partnership. It's a P3 where we do bring industry and education together, not just on a one-on-one basis, because we all know that happens a lot. This college has a special relationship with this company, but rather we're bringing together regionalism. We're bringing together the competitors who are in an entire industry and asking very detailed questions about what are their specific needs? Not just, oh yeah, I need some entry-level positions filled, but exactly what does that look like? Exactly what are the competencies, the skill sets they're needing? And then we bring the educators around the table who we think would be the best to fill that. Sometimes it is the four-year degree institutions. Sometimes it's our community colleges. Sometimes it's our career and tech ed programs. So that is what the Talent to Industry Exchange is about. So anyway, I just wanted to give you that background, and I hope you find the information and the materials very informative. At the end of the presentation will be my contact information. If you would like to get any of these digitally, feel free to contact me and I can send you that. Thank you all so much for being here. It's been a real pleasure.
So I think I heard that that's homework for all the educators in the audience. In fact, Keely and I were talking with one of our evaluators that works with Kansas City Area Education Research Consortium about developing an evaluation tool that we could give to high school seniors who have participated in robust, and for us it would be STEM programs. So we can identify how do students address ambiguity or manage complex problems. I think today at midnight is bag and tag for FIRST Robotics across the city. And I know those kids right now are managing complex problems on how to finish getting that robot done and put into a bag. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today's forum, representing the 4 key sectors identified through the work of KC Rising: engineering, biotech and life sciences, information technology, and finance and insurance. Representing the engineering sector is Clint Robinson. Clint is an Associate Vice President and Director of State and Local Government Affairs at Black & Veatch. Clint has a Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering and a Master's of Science in Chemical Engineering from the University of Kansas. He spent 25 years designing water and wastewater systems in North and South America before his current role for the last 8 years. Clint is the father of 3 publicly educated girls, a recovering school board member, and a registered professional engineer for Global Engineering Company for 33 years. So, Clint, I should have had balloons because this is the start of Engineering Week. So, welcome to the stage, Clint.
It is. Thank you.
Representing the biotech and life sciences sector is Daryl Pint. Daryl Pint is the CEO of Siva Biommune and has 32 years of industrial biotechnology management experience. Siva, an animal health biological vaccine manufacturing company located in Lenexa, Kansas, has recently been ranked as the third largest animal health company in Kansas City. With over 375 local employees, Siva is a key contributor to the region's international leader in animal health sciences. So welcome to the stage, Daryl. In addition to his professional achievements, Daryl is an active member in the Kansas City community. He's a graduate of the 2014 Leadership Kansas program and an engaged board member in the Animal Health Corridor, BioKansas, and Grace Point Church. He is active in workforce and talent development for the biotechnology industry. In his role, he has an enthusiasm for equipping and supporting opportunities for students in the industrialization of biotechnology and research. Representing the information technology sector is Sue Lay. Sue Lay is the Chief Data Officer at DST Systems. Sue is responsible for the company's enterprise-wide data and information strategy, governance, control, policy development, and effective exploitation. Sue is currently leading the architecture and development team in building integrated data platform utilizing the latest big data technology. Prior to joining DST, Sue spent 6.5 years as vice president at JP Morgan Chase, focusing on enterprise architecture and information architecture. She spent 2 years at Great West Financial in migrating JP Morgan Book of Business into Great West record-keeping system. Prior to that, Sue spent 10 years in the healthcare industry and building software and data warehouses for hospitals around the world. She graduated from Iowa State University in 1998 with distinction and participated in the honor program. Welcome to the stage, Sue. Representing the finance and insurance sector is Ken Selzer. Ken Selzer was elected as the Kansas Insurance Commissioner in 2014, has a CPA, and began serving in that position on January 12, 2015. He previously worked in the reinsurance industry for more than 30 years, most recently as an executive managing director for a worldwide brokerage and insurance services firm. In addition to his credentials as a certified public accountant, Ken has earned a number of professional designations, including Chartered Property and Casualty Underwriter, Associate in Reinsurance, and Fellow of the Life Management Institute. Ken is active in many professional community and charitable organizations. He has served as the president of the Rotary Club of Leawood, chairman of the Kansas Society of CPAs Educational Foundation, and president of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation Heart of America chapter. He currently serves on the advisory council of the K-State University College of Business and is a member of the K-State University Foundation Board of Trustees. He previously served as a Fairway, Kansas city councilman and city council president. Ken graduated with honors with a BS in accounting from K-State University. He earned a master's degree in business administration from the University of Southern California. Please join me in welcoming all of our distinguished panelists to the stage this morning. At this time, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sopcich back to the stage to serve as the facilitator for today's panel.
All right. I've got a variety of questions here, and we're going to go through these, and please feel free to you don't have to be called on. Feel free to interrupt somebody else or inject something along the road here. It's not a CNN panel, but we'll do the best we can. We're going to start, if each one of you can respond to this question, and Clint, we're going to start with you. I would like to point out, though, that Martha left something out of Clint's introduction. Clint and his wife, Britton, are co-chairing our scholarship fundraiser in November of this year. And so, Clint, I'd just like to thank you in advance. I know it's going to be a great success. Thank you. So each of you represent an industry sector that has a significant importance to our regional economy. Please talk a little about the industry sector you represent, the types of businesses within that sector, and the role and importance of this industry in both our regional economy and the global economy. Clint, you can go first.
You know, I can't think of a more exciting time to be part of the engineering and architectural community in this country. For how many years now we've been talking about critical human infrastructure that's been crumbling. We built it well. We told somebody it would last 50 years, it lasted 100, so we shouldn't be surprised now that it's crumbling under our feet. The real question for us in our industry is, are we going to rebuild our grandfathers' infrastructure, or are we going to build our grandkids' infrastructure? And I think there's an obvious answer to that, but it's a pretty significant sea change in our business. Because we're in a business that if you do something well, you rarely break it and learn how to do it again. You replicate it because it works. And so in our industry, we're having to learn how to blend, collaborate, and layer all of the engineering services in order to provide a better critical human infrastructure system. So in our business, we're not just looking for civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, computer science engineers, human resources, finance, everything in our company. We're a global company. But the real task for us is, how do we get them all to communicate with each other and share what they know to provide a different and innovative and sustainable future? So a lot of what we're doing, the technical capabilities are already there. The question for us in our industry, and for those of you that are educators out in the community, and I hope you'll have the opportunity to ask some questions here, I think the real challenge for all of us in this room is, how do we stay nimble so that we can make sure that the students that we're teaching going into the future have an open enough mind and can do enough things and wear enough different types of sneakers that they can walk from one room to the next and speak competently about something in order to make an effective change. So there isn't anything that we will do in our business in the future without the support of good education. And so I'm really excited to be here today and be part of this conversation.
Clint, one quick little question. How many employees does Black & Veatch have?
We have 12,000 globally here in the Kansas City area. I think we're roughly 3,500.
3,500? Terrific. Daryl?
Well, the animal health industry, it's about a $36 billion a year globally business. Out of the U.S., that's $13 billion. In Kansas City, we have an organization called the Animal Health Corridor, and it stretches from Manhattan to Columbia, from St. Joe to Emporia, and it houses over 300 industries that support the animal health. There's about 20,000 employees in that. If you look at the life science side, that's about 3 times bigger than what the animal health side of the business is. I know a lot about the animal health industry because that put 4 of my sons through college, and I relied on that. When we look at what that entails, it's how we feed our pets. It's how we treat our pets. And if you look at the last 15 years, last 10 years, last 5 years, the number of treatments for your pets has exponentially grown. Why is that? Because the science that is taught at our universities has made a link between the human and the animal, and things that were only able to be applied to humans are now applied to animals. Our companion animals, we used to take to the vet, and we would say, okay, what's wrong with my dog or my cat? They might run a few tests, you get down to the end, and you put the animal down. The options now are so vast and so life-changing in the animal that our pets live a lot longer. The work that's done in our universities have enabled discovery of these new market fields. However, the industry has to stay in line with these discoveries. The industry of itself, 25% of those jobs are in discovery. 75% of those jobs are outside of that. And we're equipping most of our biology students towards discovery, not equipping them for the industrialization of the discoveries that others are making. And that's something that we need to work on. Thank you.
Daryl, I'm going to assume your sons went to Johnson County Community College? That's okay.
No, I still get
That's okay.
alumni
Yeah.
requests.
You set it up. I mean,
But here, I did. But here's a question. The Animal Health Corridor, is there another one of those corridors anyplace in the United States?
There is not another one in the US, and there's not another one in the world. It's amazing when I walk my pet down the street and you talk with neighbors and they ask, what is this you do? Well, I work for SIVA, it's an animal health company. And we get to talking and I talk about the Animal Health Corridor. I haven't talked to one person outside the industry that knows a single thing about the Animal Health Corridor. Yet, if I go to any conference in another country, you're from the Animal Health Corridor. What is it like? What's the Midwest like? We established in the Animal Health Corridor an investment forum. And originally it started out 5 years ago, and we had a few people coming in, and we had to beg them, you know, okay, we'll even give you breakfast and lunch. Now we limit the number of investors that come. And they come from, I think last year we had 13 countries coming in to see pitches by startup companies within our region.
It's terrific. Sue,
So I'm representing DST. So DST is very unique in a way that we have health and wealth data. So if you talk about wealth, it's about the mutual funds, it's about your retirements, 401k, 403bs, businesses. It's also about your ETF management. And we also have your health, which is your pharmacy, when you go to the pharmacy, when you have prescriptions, dispensers, and your medical claims data. So we are a technology company, but we're serving two very different businesses. But it's all surrounded in individuals, me as a me, right? Regardless of whether I have these mutual funds, I have these 401k or 403b retirement businesses, or I have these ongoing medical medications that I'm taking. So at the end of the day, for a human being, for us, is to be able to retire comfortably. In order to retire, not only I have enough money for me to keep going, you know, living the life that I want to live, but I have to care about the one is available to all humans today is your medical expenses, right? Can I afford retirement? Can I afford my medical expenses after I retire? So we have all this information where from a technology standpoint is really, technology is the core of how we do the business in any company around the world. So in our mind, from a DSC standpoint, there are 5 key things that going on in the IT department. One is mobile. Everyone has the cell phones, all the information as the tips of your, open up your phones and do a search on it, right? The second thing is social media. We share a lot of information in the social media. So anytime that when we think that there is a life event changes to an individual, that is where it triggers someone to make some changes in their lives, including your health, including your wealth, right? So if I get married, now I have to think about, you know, what I have to save more and what are mutual funds. So we tend to go out to social media and ask questions to share information around the world and get perspective. Even you have diseases, right? even your doctor tell you this is maybe the way that you're supposed to go and do it. And then we tend to go out and ask other people, what is your second opinion, the third opinion, what are other doctors saying, and all those stuff. Is the social media that's become the key to the individual and how they make decisions. Another thing is advanced analytics, which is data science, right? Why do we need that? Because of social media, really. Because we want to know, like, for us, from a marketing standpoint, how do we targeting you in a certain mutual funds, right? We want to know what TV you watch, what book you read, and what website you go to. Those are the places we tend to push the advertisements to you more directly, instead of just generically publish it out and hoping that you will pick up those channels, right? It's very targeting marketing approach. That's why the advanced analytics and the data science are really evolving in this market, where we, from a DST standpoint, have a hard time finding talents in this area, where we always have to go to the west and the east to find those resources. And next in that is really the cybersecurity, right? We have a couple of people already talk about cybersecurity. To be honest, we don't have a problem finding talent in this area, but the cybersecurity changed the way we do business. In terms of technology, it's no longer you can just keep Windows 97 or Windows 2003s and hope you're done with it, right? It's not, because the cybersecurity, the older technology you have, is the easiest ones for them to really hack, right? So we want to keep our technology up to date as much as we can. So just for me, myself, personally, I was a customer of Target, and I had my information got breached to, other people's, and my identity being stolen. Even today, I'm struggling with that, because oftentimes there is a lot of people call me, hey, you apply for this credit card, and I have never applied for this credit card, right? I have to, all these things is still hitting me after 2 or 3 years after Target's these identity death issue, hacking of that, right? So I think cybersecurity is very important. At DST, we have these transformation programs that are going on for the next 3 years, is to upgrade our technology, to get our technology as latest as possible, as protected as possible. And then next to that is really a cloud computing in our mind, is if we go in cloud. As we do these transformation programs, we predefine the technology stack for each of the applications should be running on, and then make the information more available, regardless of whether you don't have to carry the information with you all the time, because it's all cloud enabled. So from our standpoint, we have hard times finding resources in the big data space as well, because with advanced analytics, right, you really need a big data technologies to really help you to do a lot of analytic stuff. When we talk about big data technology, it's not about I'm doing big data. I mean, DST, we are not as big as JP Morgan. When we have tens of terabytes of data. We have about 2 or 3 petabytes of data. But we are utilizing the big data technology itself to solve the business problem. I think that is the key word. And we have hard time finding resources or talent in this area, where we always have to go to the east and the west to find those talents. So from a DST standpoint, technology, we are going through the transformations right now to upgrade our technology. Cybersecurity drive the whole thing. It changed the game, how we do the business from a technology standpoint.
That's terrific. Sue, how many employees does DST have?
Currently, we have 11,000.
11, are they all located in Kansas City?
Kansas City, we have a little bit less. No. We have Birmingham, Kansas City, and we have some office in Thailand, India, and UK, and Canada.
Okay. So everyone's talking about going to the East Coast and the West Coast to find talent. Why don't you have an office on the West Coast or the East Coast?
Well, we grew out in Kansas City.
Okay.
So it is a good question, right? So because Kansas City is a nice area, right? It's very nice. In talking about Overland Park School District is one of the top 10s in the countries. And plus, living expenses is a little bit better, right, than the East and the West Coast. It's very, very expensive to go to the East and the West Coast, and especially when I was at J.P. Morgan, we were told to ask to move to East Coast. We don't want to because it's very expensive to live there. And we like the community here because people are nicer.
It's good to know.
The East Coast people is like, you can tell they are from East Coast, you know? They are very, so.
That's great. I was born in California, but I've lived here my whole life. Ken.
Thank you very much, and I so appreciate you inviting me to join today. This group is exactly the group I need to speak to, so thank you. I am a CPA. I thought I'd make my career even more exciting and got in the insurance business, so how about that? Does that work for you? I am the Kansas Insurance Commissioner. I am one of only 12 that are elected around the state, so most all of them are appointed because it's such a technical job. But we've done some things to create an insurance certificate within the insurance sector, and I want to talk about that in a little bit here too. But I guess I first want to say just a couple of things. My wife and I are so dedicated to education here in Johnson County and around the state, and especially in the financial area. We support, through the Blue Valley Educational Foundation, an Innovative Teacher Award that dedicates one of those 2 awards to a STEM teacher. We support scholarships in Lewisburg. We support scholarships at my hometown back in Gossel. We support scholarships at KSU in accounting, especially for people who are financially challenged, students who are financially challenged. We're just dedicated to this whole thing of bringing more students into the financial sector, and we try to lead our lives that way too. I am so proud of Kansas. We have a much higher workforce participation rate than most of the country does. We're in the top 10 or near the top 10 every year in workforce participation rate. We're in the lower part of the unemployment rate. We run about, in Johnson County here, run about 3%. We're about a full point below the country, below the state. It is a good place to find a job here, particularly in the financial sector. So I just want to keep re-emphasizing that. Some of the examples of what is in this very broad sector, if you go to page 20 in the book that was shown to us earlier, that's called Education Asset Inventory. If you go to page 20, you'll see just a nice list of different types of things that are covered there. And I'll give you some very brief examples. I started out as a CPA, went to work for one of the very big CPA firms here in town. It was Big 8 at the time. It's now in the Big 4. But the CPA firms running the gamut in terms of size. So you can attract a whole interest of your students that go on to college to get an accounting degree, from those that want to work in a small firm to those that want to work in a very big firm. We have wealth managers, we have investment firms, and there's examples from the very large to the very big. We have Waddell & Reed, 21st Century on the investment firms. We have creative planning, and Step Rothwell is a good example of a smaller, more dedicated type of a wealth manager firm. Just a lot of things like that. Insurance companies. AIG has a big operation here. So does Farmers Insurance Company. So does Zurich. So does Travelers. So do a number of insurance agencies like Truss and Bucati and some others like that. Lockton is huge here in town, one of the biggest firms based here. So, and then actuarial firms, of course, actuarial firms are part of this industry too. Lewis and Ellis being a good example. So they all need technical people. I see our challenge here in the state of Kansas and around the country to expand that subset of students who come out of high school who want to pursue a technical or a financial degree. The really interesting part of getting a degree or a credential or an associate's degree with in business or accounting or something like that is you can go almost any direction after that. That can be a credential or a degree that can help you get your career started, and then you can move on into any other technical degree that you might want. A lot of people, not a lot, but some people go on to be engineers, some go on to be scientists, some go on to be information technology people. It is a good place to start. So if you're interested in counseling your students where to go and they don't quite know where to go, it's a good place to start, a really good place to start. Just terribly briefly on the insurance certificate that we've started here in the state of Kansas, we lacked university coursework, in-depth coursework in insurance. So about a year and a half ago, we started an insurance certificate where in any of the 4 participating public universities, as well as Johnson County Community College, you can take a introduction to insurance course, a couple of second-level courses, and an internship, and get a certificate. We've broke down barriers amongst the universities in the state of Kansas by making those second and third level courses available online, so a student at KU Edwards who's taken his intro course here at Johnson County Community College can reach out to another university and take the specialty within insurance they want. So we're doing all kinds of innovative things that really try to drive at this issue of we don't have enough people here in this state and in this county, in this industry. What a good way to start your career. Thank you.
Ken, you mentioned a few by name, but how many insurance companies and how many insurance employees in this region?
In the state of Kansas, we have 40,000 insurance employees. I regulate every company that writes business in the state of Kansas. We have 15,000 companies that write insurance in the state of Kansas. There's probably 30 or 40 larger ones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're here not to talk about the past or even the present, but about the future. So what do you see on the horizon for your industry? And Daryl, I'm going to ask you to go first on this. And how do you anticipate these changes will impact your core functions, your projects, and your workforce needs? Are there particular skill sets you anticipate needing or positions which will be in high demand? And will there be new or different ways of doing business?
Yes.
Good answer.
Oh, my. Things change, and they change fast. In the past, we all had R&D departments, and we utilized them to discover and industrialize our vaccines. We still hold true to that in part, but the advances that are coming through universities right now, more and more of the industry are partnering with those postdoctorate students and the projects that they're working on, because they effectively take out a lot of that discovery time, and we can go right into development and see how the vaccine or product is going to work. So I think you're going to see more partnerships from the industry with university. And that's a given. The next thing that you're going to see is more data analytics. Animal health industry lags a little bit because we aren't quite as cash deep as the human side. So we lag a little bit and watch it be proven, and then we jump in with no life jacket. So we're going to need people capable of the analytics, which means you need to be very functional in animal health science to apply the analytics to big data. The other area is in controls. Controls of all of our equipment, our bioprocess equipment, has more and more advanced control systems, and we lack people who understand that logic and can program and troubleshoot and modify and enhance those current systems. And it's only going to get more and more advanced. The other thing I see our industry moving towards is global. And when we think global, we have to have people who understand and are able to partner and work with brokers in other countries. We have to have people who can speak other languages, because guess what? Not everybody speaks Kansas. And and we end up, I can just tell you this, just in 2012, we built a new building and we started it. But prior to the start of that building that we were going to market a product for, we went out and we went into 50 different countries and we set up the logistics of this product that was going to be manufactured and shipped. We spent 3 years just building the logistics in these countries. Now that product has grown 499% since 2012. So if we are active and we have people who have the right mindset to look in advance of what it's required, aren't afraid of challenges, and are willing to tackle something that hasn't been done before, that will be the kind of people that will find a job.
Great, thank you, Daryl. Sue?
I think I touched that a little bit just now. So in our industry, in the technology space, is mobile computing. Is been going on for many, many years. And the next, right now what we're focusing on is in the advanced analytics, is your data science, the data engineers. That's what we have been hiring is a data scientist and a data engineer. Especially data engineers are very hard to find. I mean, just for past 2 months, we trying to hire like 6 different positions, and right now I have 4 open full-time positions that open for the data engineers, and I have hard time finding those here locally. So the next one is really cybersecurity. Is another area that the trend is going from a technology standpoint, regardless of what industry you are. Cybersecurity is number one issues. The risks, the regulations, all these is add to it. And then the next one is really cloud computing, PaaS, which is a platform as a service and software as a service. Those are the really trending right now in the technology space to find the talents in this space. From a software development standpoint, DevOps, it become a trend right now. It's no longer traditional development versus the support team. It is that the support, somewhere in the middle is what we call DevOps. It has been trending in the software development area as well in the technology space.
Thank you, Sue. Ken?
Yes, the trends in the financial sector are, you're watching those on the news every night when you watch the national news.
I don't know if everyone's watching the financial trends on the national news, but that's okay.
Until the election this last November, we fully expected more and more stifling regulation within the financial services sector. As you know from watching the national news, that you see a lot of these now being lifted or reversed. There were some very clear examples. The Dodd-Frank bill that some of you have heard about from years back since the financial crash, much of that may be reversed. The Department of Labor rules around wealth managers and investment advices is being relaxed. The ACA is being changed. Much of those financial regulations created fewer and fewer competitors, meaning fewer people, fewer companies competing for your insurance dollar and competing for your financial services dollar. All of those things that really stifled competition. That's being reversed now. So we have trends that will be supportive of building the financial services sector, hence a need for more employees with base level certificates, associate degrees, 4-year degrees, graduate degrees. The sector is going to expand. It will be needing more employees.
Clint?
You know, I didn't, when I started, I probably should have shared with you that kind of the pillars of the work that we do at Black & Veatch are, I'm resisting the word columns, but I'll explain to you why. We do everything water in engineering and infrastructure and construction. Stormwater, wastewater, clean water. We do everything energy. We do coal, we do nuke, we do renewables. We do whatever the customer needs and what is best for the situation. We do everything in telecommunications. The towers and the connectivity that your cell phones connect through, and even some of the data systems and asset managements. We do that kind of work. We also do safety and security, some of which I can't share with you today or they'd kill me, but help make this country safer, which includes some of the cybersecurity elements. And how do we get ahead of the curve in cybersecurity? But I will tell you the thing that challenges me the most as the Director of State and Local Government Affairs and working with cities and counties around this country is every one of them comes to me and says, there's two things, Clint, that I need. I need more efficiency and I need more jobs. And yet they don't understand the irony of that question, because they don't understand that built in with some efficiencies is a change in workforce. So one of the really important aspects of the changing future of our business, I think, is in workforce development, changing people from one function which may or may not be necessary any longer and train them into a field that is necessary now. So it's a little bit of what I said about nimbleness. So I don't argue with them anymore about why those things conflict. I just make sure that they've got a workforce partnership. I make sure they've got a Clyde McQueen or somebody in their city that they can go to and say, we're about to move X number of people from the auto industry that are doing this, it's going to be robots, and so people need to learn how to operate robots, right? So that's coming to all of us, and that nimbleness is important. There are three terms that are becoming very prevalent in our industry, and they overlay those four columns that I talked about: energy, water, communications, safety, and security. And those three terms are smart, sustainable, and resilient. Everything we do in each one of those four columns has an umbrella over the top of it that says, how are we going to make this product smarter, more sustainable, or sustainable at all, and resilient in order to account and rebuild. And resiliency is not an absolute term. Resiliency, frankly, is what you can afford and what you believe to be practical in order to protect yourself. So when somebody says, I'm resilient, I always want to challenge them and say, against what and to what degree? The last thing I will say is, when I recruit people at the universities, and some of you here from the high schools know I spend time there, the most important thing that I tell a student, or when I'm interviewing them, is what can you do for me tomorrow that I can't do today? So the change in our environment is, I'm not looking at Mike Nelson and saying, Mike, I really look forward to you coming and working with us at Black & Veatch, and you can expect this in your first 5 years, and you can expect this in your second 5 years, and then in the next 10 years you can do this. You can't do that anymore because the people that we're hiring are gone in 3 to 5 years. So our challenge is how to keep them, challenge them, and one of the ways I believe that we can do it in the engineering and architectural sectors is to ask them when they are going into college and as they graduate from college looking for a job, is what can you do for me now that I can't do? So it's look for that edge, look for that thing that changes. Because trust me, the formulas never change. Water still flows downhill. Those things don't change. It's how we prepare it, how we build it, how quickly we can develop that information. So
I have to ask, I mean, how can you gauge someone's ability to be adaptive?
You know, I think part of it is how people think. And, you know, when we talked about attraction, access, all of the people things that we're talking about today, is when you ask somebody and they say, you know what I really want to do is I just want to build water treatment plants for the rest of my life. I want to go, and trust me, I need people that will do that for me. But if the water market starts to slide, I need somebody that's willing to say, you know what, I'll go build that wind farm I have some basic skill sets that allow me to understand free-flowing fluids. You know, the movement of electricity is similar in principle. I think I can learn that. It's that willingness to adapt. So at Black & Veatch, I say I'm really glad about two things about our company. One is that we're diverse. So if one part of the market starts to fall off, another part of the market typically makes up for it. So if you can move your workforce in between those things, that's a great workforce development tool that you have inside. And the other is that we're global. In this particular economy, with this particular administration, if you don't know what it is that you're going to do or how that's going to grow, the opportunity to look at another country where they may be developing at a more rapid rate, you can invest and move things there, those are both really important things.
So what if I just want to build water plants?
You know, I've got a lot of people that are the best at their business in building water plants. And for me to say that an engineering company doesn't need an engineer that sits in a cube and designs water treatment plants all day because that's what they want to do is just silliness. But I have to have flexible, for years we've complained that we look at our shoes too much, we don't know how to communicate. I'm really trying to break that and say, we've got some really dynamic, innovative people that now will look at your shoes when they're talking to you.
Looking at my shoes right now.
Right. So we have to have that full complement, that full balance. But I think the important thing is someone's willingness to design water plants, to design energy plants, if the business niche or the needs require us to do so.
Anyone else want to comment on this, on the
Yeah,
adaptability
I
of the
think
work?
flexibility is very important, especially in the information technology. I mean, technology changes so fast. Think about iPhones. Every year, you come out with a new versions, right? iPads and things like that. If we don't adapt to the changes, you will be way behind. I mean, for DST ourselves, we have a challenge because 70% of our workforce is still in the mainframe, but it's an old technology. So I think be flexible, self-develops is very important because technology changes every minute, every second. So,
And
Daryl?
I find that the young men and women come out right now are adaptable, much more flexible than me. And many of those that we have succession plans for the next 5 to 10 years, I find them much more adaptable and flexible and have a want. They have a want to see change. And if we aren't providing that change, they just say goodbye. I am valued by how much I get input, and change is part of that.
Terrific. One last question, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. So, and this gets right down to one of the reasons why we're here today. How can high school and college students best prepare and position themselves to step into these high-demand positions? Sue, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I would say in the information technology, right, I can tell you what you learn in the college not really apply a lot. So I would say when you in the high school or college get internships. Internship is the best way to learn. I mean, at DST, I didn't know until recently that we actually has a high school intern at DST. And we actually pay them when they come in intern with us, and at the same time, we teach them. You know, they stay with us in our area, and then we share with them how to do codings and all those stuff. And when they graduate from high school, if they are good, we actually give them the scholarships to go to the college. So for me, I interned with Intel Corporations a long time, 20 years ago. Down in California, and I think that's how I get my first job, is because I have the real life experience in the technology space.
Ken?
So you can help us by helping with the soft skills. You're not there to teach soft skills, but we need soft skills in industry. Those soft skills being showing up on time, working with others, all kinds of those things, looking presentable. We don't need people necessarily that can get up in front of a group and speak to a group. Later, we will need those leaders that have that. we need people who have good, solid soft skills. What is amazing to me is that if you find somebody who has those basic soft skills, you can teach them just about anything, not all of them, but just about. If someone has the discipline with the soft skills, they probably have the discipline to learn something else. And again, I am absolutely not talking about doing the things like we're doing today, speaking in front of a group, that kind of thing. It's the discipline, your personal discipline. So help us with that. Please help us with that. And then please help us come up with ideas of how we can expand the number of students who want to think analytically or financially or technically. We need to expand that subset. In Kansas, we have, I think, a flat high school graduation rate. And the number of students coming through high school, I think, has flattened out over the last couple of years. That means a lot to community colleges, to universities, and so on. We need to figure out how to expand within that flat, stable numbered group, expand the number of people who are interested in analytical, STEM, or financial careers.
It's terrific. Clint.
4 quick things, good examples. I know that they have other names. I'm going to use the names that I'm familiar with. I'm very embedded with Blue Valley CAPS. One of the things that's impressed me in our field in engineering is that we teach all engineering skills. So you don't know whether you want to be a civil engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer. You just think you want to be an engineer. So the thing that's impressed me is that when these kids do their projects and they do the formulas, they don't get any of them right. I mean, they really don't. I mean, they are way off, right, Mike? I mean, they are way off, but at least they've tried the formula, and so they know what that's like. They know whether that's what they want to do, and you need to do it younger and younger and younger when there's a no-fear attitude. So don't be afraid to give them hard things and them not get the answer right. Sometimes it's learning the process and refining to get the right answer later. So I think that's important to learn. It's not always the right answer. It's always the right process. There will be time to learn the right answer. 2, foreign language. We've already talked about it a little bit. Foreign language in and of itself, and I speak Spanish fluently and Portuguese a little bit, and I spent 10 years doing work in Latin America. I had no expectation of doing work as an engineer in Latin America. But because I spoke Spanish, that opportunity was given to me. I don't see language as an end all. I don't see learning French or Spanish or German or any of those languages in and of themselves as a degreed program. It's a very competitive field, but you need to start thinking about it on top of other things you want to learn. Think about a language with business, with IT, with engineering, with finance, with one of those, because it will help. 3, change expectations. When kids are going to college and they're looking at a degree, they see 120 hours, 132 credit hours. They know how many credit hours they're bringing from their College Now program with their high schools. So they know they've whittled it down now to 110 hours that they need at the university. And their parents are so glad that they're going to finish in 3 years instead of 4. Okay? So it's great for the community college, it's great for the high schools, it's great to advance kids, but change that expectation possibly. If they're going to a 4-year college, add on top of that major, add some minors. Maybe throw in language. Maybe throw in business. But when you graduate from the university, maybe actually while you're at the university, take 132 or take 150 hours, get a major and a minor, because those are the kinds of things that differentiate you from others. And the last thing, and I've learned it ever since I was on the school board, is a phrase that I've said is, learn to teach. If you learn something well enough to teach it to somebody else, you know it. And frankly, there's no benefit in learning something if you're not willing to teach it to somebody else.
Terrific. Darrell.
Well, there's a generation. I've hired probably 300, and I ended up at maybe 174. Okay, and what I find is the people that are coming in right now want autonomy but they can't work with ambiguity. They want responsibility, but they don't want accountability. They want to be a leader, but they have no idea what it means to serve or mentor. So we make brilliant kids and young men, but what I think would do best for them, if they job shadowed some guy that hauled garbage, if they job shadowed and spent time in a nursing home, if they job shadowed somebody in a preschool that just loved to be around booger picking kids. I think it would put a different appreciation on the degree that they're getting and the opportunity that they have. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we have time for a couple questions from the audience. Anyone out there has a question for the panel? Sure, sir.
So I just came back from Washington, D.C. at the CompTIA fly-in, where we're working with Congress in order to look at the Chance in Tech Act that will promote things like IT and apprenticeships as in supporting services. I think IT will probably lead the industry. My concern is someone graduating with IT, what are the other skill sets that are going to make that IT valuable? Huge gaps. Huge gaps. I mean, in our construction industry, we don't have enough welders. Now, is the welder of the future going to be the tip-down metal hat and the small window? Or is it going to be the guy driving a piece of instrument up behind it that has the capacity to do it? I don't know what that skill set is, but I do know that there will always be the need to combine two pieces of metal in order to create a stronger structure at that joint with welding. So when I say those basic principles never change, water still flows downhill, I think your responsibility in your field is teaching them how is the advancement of that, how is the speed with which that's being developed, how are they going to take those same simple tools that we all learned how to do on the drafting board and convert them into an automated, computerized, movable, nimble tool so that it can be adjustable for the future.
Darrell?
Yeah, we've lost trades. We have. There is a huge gap in need. What I used to pay maybe $600 a square foot for, routinely now I'm getting quoted for $1,000 to $1,200 a square foot because we haven't the trades here. They have to be brought in. There is something to be said. I think we spent too many years saying that the trades was what you did if you did not go to university, and that's a shame. They are equally talented and probably much more adept at problem solving than many of us. That's a gap that needs to be addressed.
One last question. Yes.
You all have given us some great ideas for what the workforce needs, and you've talked about with K-12 and higher ed, focusing maybe specifically for a second on K-12 education. As we think about changing that institution to prepare students the way that higher ed and the workforce needs them to be prepared, and you've given us some great examples and some great language for that. I think mostly we've all agreed that changing that
Thank
Can
you,
I
Susan.
answer that question?
I'm not going to repeat that for you, but
Can I?
Ken, go ahead.
So thank you for asking the question. And here's a classic example. So 2 years ago, we gave that Blue Valley Education Foundation Innovative Teacher Award, and one of them went to a lady who started an all-girls pre-engineering class at Blue Valley Northwest. Couldn't believe the number of kids that wanted to enroll in that class because she had the foresight to think that maybe at that age, at sophomore or junior in high school, it was a little bit intimidating for some girls to step up and talk about math. And it worked perfectly. So it's ideas like that that are innovative that I think are incumbent on everyone to think about what can they do that's a little different that might encourage people to step forward and show some interest. Because most of them, when they show interest, they'll grab it like you wouldn't believe. So thank you for asking that question.
One other thing that I think the industry needs to do is give externships and figure out a way to work with the time available that a teacher has in a meaningful way so they understand maybe a broad stroke of that industry. And then when we say innovation, it has an anchor.
You know, thank you for your answers and also for your questions. Outstanding panel. Can we give them a big round of applause, please? We are so fortunate in our community to have such a collection of outstanding leaders who really care about our community and where the direction that it's going to go in the future. So this bodes well for Kansas City and the region, and I'd like to thank you for your participation and also to all of you for being here today. Martha, I think you're going to close.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, Dr. Sopcich. Thank you all for your time and interest today. The Planning Committee hopes this event will serve as a springboard to continued conversations around guiding and preparing students for their future. For digital versions of today's materials, please contact Keely Schneider. Her information is now on the screen. You'll also be able to view today's events on the Johnson County Community College YouTube channel. And we thank you, Johnson County Community College, Dr. Sopcich, your team, especially Denise Griffey, Allie Scott, and Chris Gray for hosting us today. Thank you also to Cindy Swartz from the DeSoto Public Schools and Linda Affolter from Blue Valley Schools and Keely Schneider from the Kansas Workforce Partnership for providing their insights and dedication to the Planning Committee for today's event. And we hope that today's forum has provided a wonderful start to your week, and let's all commit to moving the conversation forward, and have a great day.